If we truly wish to master our instrument, it's vital that we utilise all the tools that are available to us. Today we're going to take a look at 3-note per string system and see how we can maximise it to its full potential. Effectively, guitar playing encompasses 3 main elements. We have note selection, we have dynamics, and we have rhythm. Today we're going to utilise the 3-note per string system to look at the last 2 of those things, to look at dynamic and rhythm. Now, dynamic in particular is often governed by the techniques that we utilise. Today we're going to use an example that utilises the legato effect, and we're going to use a hammer-on technique, so it's going to sound smooth. We're also going to have a little bit of palm muting just because we're going to play it in the style of a metal lick. In terms of rhythmic groupings or rhythm, we're going to use a grouping of 6 notes. And we're going to apply 6 notes to a beat of music. So if your metronome was beeping, then every time it beeps, you would play 6 notes. And the nice thing about the 3-note per string system is because it always has 3 notes in every single string across every single scale pattern, we can apply this consistently across the whole scale in many different ways. So let's start off with something nice and small and simple, and then we'll look to expand it across the entire neck with lots of different varieties, which is what's really great about the 3-note per string system. So we're going to use the hammer-on. Let's just go for G major to keep things nice and simple, and just look at the first position. We're going to work, first of all, just between the E and the A string. And all I've done is played 6 notes. I've just ascended through the scale, really. I've picked the first note of each string, so on the E string I've picked the string, followed it by 2 hammer-ons, and then I've done exactly the same on the A string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Give me 6 up at 6 notes within a beat. Now, if this was the first time of doing this, or anything we're working on from scratch, what we really should do is just really focus on this area, work on the timing, work on the technique, make sure everything's nice and even, put on a metronome, let it click away and work up to a speed where you can play it with reasonable comfort. And you're just looking for consistency, so you could just work on little short bursts of playing 2 or 3 beats at a time and then having a rest, something like this. And that gives you a nice little idea that you can play there. Just for reference, I'm only using downstrokes here, and I'm ever so slightly dampening the strings with my right hand, just touching the edge of the strings with the side of the palm. Now that's really nice in its own, but what we'd like to do, or what we can do, is utilise the scale system to expand that in many different ways. Now there I've used a string grouping of the E string and the A string, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to progress that same idea, but take it across different string groupings. So for example, I could start it on the A string and move to the D string. I could then do the same thing between the D and the G strings. Same between the G and the B. And between the B and the E string. And we could build lots of individual exercises based on that and really get used to the different finger stretches and positioning and make sure everything's nice and smooth and consistent. Now we can expand on that even more. So rather than working on just 1 string grouping at a time, we could, for example, work on 2 string groupings at a time, essentially working across 2 beats. So if we look at the top, we could work from the E to the A and then the A to the D, and you get something like this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can work on that again in isolation as a nice little drill. You can work on the other string groups across the neck, across that pattern. So for example, we did the A and D strings. Now we can work from the A, D and G strings. I think I got that right. And we can do that across all the strings. So what I'm doing is taking 2 groupings at a time and repeating them to give myself a nice little exercise. If you're happy with that, you can then progress it to playing these types of groupings across the whole 6 strings, for example. Just using 2 groupings at a time like I've done there is a nice way of doing it, but there's lots of different options, and it's up to you to kind of find the things that you like. But if I just take that very simple idea and apply it across all 6 strings, only 1 grouping at a time, then you'll get something like this. Or up speed. Which is a really nice way to progress through a scale pattern. Now that's great in itself, but we can of course expand this across the neck. So for example, we could very simply just do exactly the same thing in another position. So if we looked at the second position, exactly the same idea. And again, you can break all that down into individual repetitions and exercises as well as making it all into one big long lick. Another way we could do it is we could look across positions. So let's go back to just using 2 string groupings. We could just work simply all the way across the tops of each position, and that would give you, again, another way of working this little pattern somewhere else across the scale set. We could of course work diagonally across the scale sections. For example, we could use like octave shapes. And as you can see, this is really easy to do. The only really thought process I've got in it is learning the initial lick. So in this case, it's just hammering on and using sextuplets. Once you practice it in all these different regions and worked on the smaller groups, it's quite easy to apply this across the whole scale, across all the positions, without too much trouble. Let's just have a little play. It's very easy to play around because you just work on that same principle of the sextuplets and just working across different parts of the 3-note per string system, and you can really maximise it to that effect. Now it's worth noting you can do all of this with the CAGED system, but the only difference is with the CAGED system is that if you're working in a single position, then you won't always have 3 notes in every single string, which means you'll have to join positions up. Now that's very straightforward to do, but ultimately we're talking about the benefits here of the 3-note per string system, and it pre-lays it out for you. So it's a nice little roadmap for all these types of ideas. You can work out one little lick in one area. As long as you use some sort of 3-note pattern, then you can expand it across the entire neck, work on certain areas that you like, perhaps play over certain chord changes in certain areas, and all of a sudden it's a natural part of your playing. It doesn't require much thought process, which allows you to focus more on the rhythmic element or the dynamic element as opposed to being too much struggling for which notes you're playing and such. So take that away, have a bit of fun with it, use it for your practice, work out new licks, work out little exercises. There's lots of stuff you can do with that. I'll do some more videos soon on the subject. Take care, and I shall see you soon. Bye for now.